I still remember sitting in my hotel room in Bangkok, scrolling through travel forums at 2 in the morning, and every single post about Kuala Lumpur seemed to carry the same warning. Dangerous. Scammy. Nothing to see. Move on to Penang instead. My finger hovered over the skip button, ready to cancel my 3-day booking and head straight to the islands. But something stopped me. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was curiosity. Whatever it was, I'm so glad I ignored every single warning, because what I discovered in those first 3 days made me do something I rarely do. I extended my stay for 2 more weeks, and by the end, I was already planning my return trip. The warning started the moment I posted in a travel group that I was heading to Kuala Lumpur. Within an hour, my notifications exploded. Watch your phone, people get robbed on motorbikes. The food will make you sick. Everything is overpriced for tourists. It's just a stopover city, not a destination. Don't walk around at night. The comments kept coming, each one more alarming than the last. I started second-guessing everything. I researched crime statistics, read government travel advisories, watched countless vlogs of people complaining about their experiences. By the time I landed at KLIA, I was convinced I'd made a terrible mistake. The taxi ride into the city did nothing to calm my nerves. My driver barely spoke English, the meter seemed to be climbing faster than I expected, and we were weaving through traffic in a way that would give any Western driver a heart attack. I clutched my backpack tighter, mentally preparing for the scam I'd read about where taxi drivers take you to fake hotels. But then something unexpected happened. We pulled up to my actual hotel, the driver helped me with my bags, charged me exactly what the meter said, and even gave me a small map with restaurant recommendations circled in pen. He refused the extra tip I tried to give him, just smiled and said welcome to Malaysia. That was my first hint that maybe, just maybe, the internet had gotten this place completely wrong. I spent my first evening doing what every paranoid traveler does. I stayed close to my hotel, walked only on main streets, and kept my phone hidden in my pocket. But even in that limited exploration, I couldn't help but notice something. The streets were buzzing with life. Families were out with small children at 9 p.m. Women were walking alone. Street vendors were calling out to me not with aggressive sales tactics, but with genuine friendliness. An elderly Chinese man at a fruit stall spent 10 minutes teaching me how to pick a good mangosteen, refusing payment for the samples he kept handing me. A young Malay woman at a clothing store helped me find a modest scarf for temple visits, then sat me down for tea and asked about my family back home. None of this matched the warnings. None of it. By day 2, I started venturing further, and this is where Kuala Lumpur began to reveal its first real secret. Everyone told me the city had nothing to see except the Petronas Towers. And sure, the towers are stunning, especially at night when they light up like twin rockets ready to launch into space. But treating them as the only attraction is like visiting Paris and thinking the Eiffel Tower is all there is. I stumbled into the Batu Caves on a whim, taking the train because it was cheap and I wanted to test the public transport everyone said was confusing. The train was spotless, air-conditioned, cost less than $1, and was easier to navigate than the London Underground. When I emerged at the Batu Cave station, I was completely unprepared for what I saw. A giant golden statue of Lord Murugan, towering 42 meters into the sky, guarding a rainbow-painted staircase that climbed into limestone caves. Monkeys lounged on the railings like tiny supervisors, occasionally snatching snacks from tourists who ignored the signs. I counted 272 steps as I climbed, each one revealing more of the Hindu temple complex built inside the caves themselves. Sunlight poured through openings in the rock ceiling, creating these dramatic shafts of light that photographers would pay thousands to replicate in a studio. And here it was, free to enter, visited by locals and tourists alike, completely absent from most top 10 lists I'd read. But here's what really got me. After I finished exploring the caves, I sat at a small restaurant at the bottom, dripping with sweat, and ordered something I couldn't pronounce from a menu with no English. The owner saw my confusion and just brought me a plate of nasi lemak with chicken rendang. I took one bite and understood immediately why Malaysians are so proud of their food. The rice was cooked in coconut milk, fragrant with pandan leaves. The sambal was spicy but complex, sweet and savory at the same time. The chicken rendang was so tender it fell apart with my fork, the sauce thick with spices I couldn't even identify. This incredible meal that would cost $30 at a trendy fusion restaurant back home, cost me $3. $3. And that's when the real revelation hit me. The warnings about Kuala Lumpur being expensive. Completely backwards. This might be one of the best value destinations in the entire world if you know where to look. I started eating like a local after that. Forget the hotel restaurant, forget the tourist trap cafes near the towers. I followed the crowds to hawker centers and kopitiam, these open-air food courts where vendors have been perfecting single dishes for generations. I watched a man make roti canai, this flaky flatbread that he stretched and twirled in the air like a pizza maker, except his was paper-thin and cooked on a flat griddle until golden. He served it with curry that I could smell from 10 feet away. 2 ringgit. Less than 50 cents. I ate char kway teow from a vendor who'd been in the same spot for 30 years, the noodles smoky from the wok, mixed with prawns and Chinese sausage and bean sprouts. 5 ringgit. Just over $1. But it wasn't just about the prices. It was about the experience. At these places, you sit next to businessmen in suits, next to construction workers still in their dusty clothes, next to students hunched over textbooks, next to elderly couples who've been coming to the same stall for decades. No one cares what you're wearing or where you're from. If you love good food, you belong there. The diversity of the food comes from something I didn't expect to find in Kuala Lumpur, a genuine mixing of cultures that actually works. Malaysia is predominantly Malay, Chinese, and Indian, and instead of these communities staying separate, they've influenced each other for generations. You see it everywhere once you start looking. The Chinese kopitiam serving Malaysian coffee. The Indian banana leaf restaurants with Malay customers. The Malay nasi kandar spots where everyone gathers. I met a Chinese Malaysian woman named Linda who ran a small tour company, and she explained it to me over breakfast. She was eating roti canai with her coffee, which she explained was already a blend, Indian bread with Malaysian curry, in a Chinese coffee shop. She told me that Malaysia isn't perfect, no country is, but there's something special about a place where you grow up celebrating Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, and Deepavali, learning to appreciate all 3 cultures as your own. Where your best friend might be from a completely different ethnic background and religion, but you still gather for meals together, you still help each other during festivals, you still consider yourself all Malaysian first. This is something the warnings never mentioned. They painted Kuala Lumpur as dangerous and unwelcoming, but they missed the warmth entirely. I extended my stay the first time after visiting the Central Market and Petaling Street. Everyone said these were tourist traps full of fake goods and aggressive sellers. And yes, you can buy knockoff watches and counterfeit bags if that's what you're after. But if you actually talk to the vendors, if you show genuine interest in their crafts, an entirely different side emerges. I spent an hour with an elderly craftsman who made traditional wayang kulit shadow puppets, intricately carved from buffalo hide. He showed me his tools, explained the stories behind different characters, let me try cutting a simple pattern myself. When I asked the price of a small puppet, he quoted me something reasonable. When I pulled out my wallet, he wrapped it carefully in newspaper, added a second smaller puppet for free, and told me to make sure I learn the story of Hang Tuah. Another vendor, selling batik fabrics, spent 30 minutes teaching me the difference between hand-drawn and stamped batik, showing me how to identify quality, explaining the meanings behind different patterns. She didn't pressure me to buy anything. When I did purchase a sarong, she threw in a matching scarf and tied it on me properly, adjusting it 3 times until she was satisfied with how it looked. This kept happening. Over and over. The supposed scammers and aggressive touts turned out to be regular people running small businesses, happy to share their knowledge with anyone who showed respect and genuine curiosity. I started exploring neighborhoods that weren't in any guidebook. Bangzar, where I found independent bookstores and coffee roasters, and a park where locals did Tai Chi at dawn. Brickfields, the Little India district, where I got lost in textile shops and watched street vendors make fresh jalebi, the syrup still sizzling as they coiled the orange spirals into hot oil. Kampung Baru, one of the oldest Malay settlements in the city, where wooden houses still stand between modern developments, and where I was invited to join a family's meal just because I was standing outside their home, clearly lost and confused. That invitation is worth explaining because it completely shattered everything I'd been warned about. I was trying to find a specific mosque when I obviously took a wrong turn. An older Malay gentleman saw me checking my phone and asked if I needed help. When I explained where I was trying to go, he offered to walk me there. Along the way, we passed his house, where his wife was setting up dinner outside under their carport. She called out to him, saw me, and immediately insisted I join them. I protested, said I didn't want to impose, but the husband laughed and said his wife would be offended if I refused. I ended up spending 3 hours with this family. We ate beef rendang and lemang, sticky rice cooked in bamboo, and ketupat, these little rice cakes wrapped in palm leaves. They asked about my family, my travels, what I thought of Malaysia. Their grandchildren showed me their school projects. The grandmother brought out old photo albums and told me stories about Kuala Lumpur decades ago, when their neighborhood was mostly rubber plantations. When I finally left, they packed food for me to take back to my hotel and made me promise to visit again before I left the city. These are the stories nobody tells you when they warn you away from Kuala Lumpur. I discovered the city's incredible mix of old and new during a random walk through the colonial district. The Sultan Abdul Samad building, with its copper domes and Moorish arches, sits across from ultra-modern skyscrapers. The Jamek Mosque, serene and beautiful, is tucked between banking towers. The old KL train station looks like something from Arabian Nights, all white columns and Islamic architecture, but it's connected to modern transit systems. This juxtaposition is everywhere, and instead of feeling jarring, it felt honest. Kuala Lumpur isn't trying to be something it's not. It's not preserving itself in amber like some European cities, and it's not bulldozing everything for glass towers like some Asian cities. It's finding a middle path. The parks surprised me too. Lake Gardens, now called Padana Botanical Gardens, covers nearly 230 acres right in the heart of the city. I spent a full day there and only covered half of it. The orchid garden alone has more than 800 species. The hibiscus garden celebrates Malaysia's national flower. The deer park lets you feed actual deer that wander up to you like park squirrels. And barely any tourists. Mostly local families, couples, people exercising, people just existing in a green space in the middle of a major city. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. For the scam, for the danger, for something to confirm the warnings. Instead, I kept accumulating experiences that did the opposite. A phone shop owner who fixed my cracked screen protector for free and refused payment because it only took him 2 minutes. A bus driver who waited for me when he saw me running late to the stop. A museum guard who, when he saw me sketching in my notebook, brought me to the best viewpoint and told me to take my time, they wouldn't close for another hour anyway. A street cat that adopted me for 3 days, following me to restaurants and waiting outside while I ate, then escorting me back to my hotel like a tiny furry bodyguard. The night markets, or pasar malam, became my favorite discovery. These pop up in different neighborhoods on different nights, temporary mazes of stalls selling everything imaginable. Fresh produce, street food, clothing, household goods, toys, electronics, traditional medicine, Lucky Charms. I learned to navigate by smell, following the scent of grilled satay or fresh curry puffs or pisang goreng, fried bananas that are somehow better than they have any right to be. The energy at these markets is incredible, vendors shouting their prices, customers bargaining, children running between stalls, the sizzle of food cooking, the evening heat slowly giving way to a cool breeze. At one night market, I watched a vendor make apam balik, this thick pancake folded over with fillings, and I was so fascinated by his technique that I just stood there watching. He noticed, grinned, and beckoned me over. For the next one, he let me pour the batter, guided my hand as I spread the toppings, peanuts and sugar and corn, then helped me fold it properly. The people in line were laughing and cheering me on. When it was done, he wrapped it up and handed it to me, refusing payment because I was his assistant now. This is what I mean when I say Kuala Lumpur works on a completely different level than what the warnings suggest. Yes, it's a city. Yes, you need to have basic street smarts like anywhere else. But the characterization of it as dangerous or hostile is so far from the reality I experience that I wonder if those warning people ever actually spent time here, or if they're just repeating things they've heard. I started documenting everything in my journal. The small moments. The grandmother at the bus stop who shared her homemade kuah with me, these little sweet cakes she'd made for her grandchildren. The teenagers at a mall who asked to take a photo with me, then showed me the best places to eat in the food court. The security guard at my hotel who learned my name by day 2 and always asked how my day went. The flower vendor who gave me a jasmine bracelet every time I walked past. The waiter who remembered my coffee order. The countless people who went out of their way to help when I looked confused, who gave directions, who recommended places, who treated me like a welcome guest in their city. By week 2, I'd developed routines. Morning coffee at a specific kopitiam in Pudu where the owner knew to make mine with less sugar. Afternoon walks through KLCC Park, watching the fountains and the city skyline. Evening meals at different hawker centers, always trying something new. Late night walks through Bukit Bintang, the neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets, the night just starting for many locals. I also discovered Kuala Lumpur's incredible art scene, something else absent from warnings. Street art in alleys that rivals Penang's famous murals. The Islamic Arts Museum with one of the world's finest collections. Independent galleries in converted shophouses. Public art installations that blend traditional and contemporary. A thriving music scene mixing traditional Malay instruments with modern genres. Film screenings, theatre performances, poetry readings, all accessible and affordable. The religious harmony struck me constantly. I'd hear the azan call to prayer from a mosque, then walk past a Chinese temple with incense smoke curling into the air, then pass a Hindu shrine decorated with fresh flowers, then see a church with Sunday services. And everyone just goes about their day. I watched a Chinese food vendor close his stall to let his Muslim neighbors use his space for evening prayer. I saw a Hindu temple hosting an event with Malay guests. I talked to a Christian pastor who told me about the interfaith council that meets monthly to discuss community issues. This isn't a tourist show. This is daily life. And it's remarkable. The coffee culture deserves its own mention. Forget what you know about coffee. Malaysian kopi is its own universe. Strong black coffee mixed with margarine and sugar, served in cups so hot you have to use a saucer to hold them. Kopi ash, iced coffee that somehow tastes completely different despite being the same beans. White coffee from Ipoh that's actually caramel-colored. The kopitiams are social hubs where men gather to discuss politics and sports, where students study for hours over a single cup, where business deals happen and gossip spreads and life unfolds. I met a local named Raj at one of these kopitiams. He was a lawyer, educated in London, could have worked anywhere, but chose to return to Kuala Lumpur. Over several conversations, he explained why. The quality of life, he said. I make less than I would in London or Singapore, but I have a nice apartment, I eat incredible food every day, I'm close to my family, I can travel easily across Southeast Asia, and I'm not stressed constantly about money. Here, he gestured around the kopitiam, this coffee costs £1. In London, I'd pay £5 for worse coffee in a sterile chain shop. The math makes sense to me. His perspective stuck with me because it highlighted something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. Kuala Lumpur isn't trying to be Singapore's flashy modernity or Bangkok's chaotic energy or Hong Kong's vertical intensity. It's comfortable being itself, a mid-sized Southeast Asian capital where you can have an excellent quality of life without breaking the bank, where traditions coexist with progress, where you can be whoever you want to be. The more time I spent in the city, the more I realized the warnings weren't just wrong, they were revealing something about the people giving them. They were judging Kuala Lumpur by standards that didn't apply. Expecting it to be a museum city like Florence. Expecting it to be a party city like Bangkok. Expecting it to be as polished as Singapore. Not accepting it for what it actually is, a living, breathing, working city where real people live real lives, and where visitors are welcome to be part of that if they approach it with openness. My extended 2 weeks flew by. I kept discovering new things until the last day. A hidden waterfall just 30 minutes from the city center. A bookstore in an old mansion with cats lounging on the shelves. A rooftop bar where locals gathered for sunset, cheap beer and expensive views. A traditional massage place where I paid $15 for 90 minutes and left feeling like a new person. A cooking class taught by a grandmother in her home kitchen. A morning at the wholesale flower market, arriving at 5 a.m. to watch the trade before sunrise. On my final night, I went back to that same kopitiam where I'd met Raj. The owner recognized me, brought my coffee without asking. I sat there for hours, watching the neighborhood wind down, thinking about everything I'd experienced. A city I almost skipped based on warnings from people who'd either never been there or who'd stayed in tourist bubbles and wondered why they had tourist experiences. Kuala Lumpur isn't perfect. It has traffic. It has pollution. It has inequality and social issues like anywhere else. But it's also generous and welcoming and surprising and delicious and affordable and diverse and real. So real. And that realness is exactly what makes it special. I'm writing this from my apartment now, back in my home country, and I'm already planning my return. Not for 3 days this time. For a month, maybe longer. Because that's what Kuala Lumpur does. It quietly gets under your skin. It doesn't demand your attention with flashy attractions. It earns your affection through small moments, through genuine interactions, through the realization that sometimes the internet is wrong, and sometimes the best experiences come from ignoring the warnings and discovering things for yourself. Everyone warned me about Kuala Lumpur. They were wrong. And I've never been happier to be proven so completely mistaken.